Welcome to the course of Mastering SQL Server Integration Services from Scratch. My name is Kameshwar Sharma. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer for more than 10 years, and I'm also a Microsoft Certified Database Administrator. Now let's have a quick look at the course outline. This is the plan I have for this course, and I have divided this entire course into 24 different sections. In the very first section, I'll explain to you how we have to install the prerequisites for this course. The prerequisites are like SQL Server 2016, and then you have to install SQL Server data tools, and also you have to set up some sample databases. All that is being discussed in the section 1. And in section 2, we'll start migrating data in a very basic manner. So like, for example, we want to move data from SQL Server to a flat file or SQL Server to Excel and vice versa. And from section 3 onwards, I have covered various transformations like character map, which is used for changing the casing. Like copy column is purely meant for kind of creating alias columns for you. And also we have derived columns for creating computed columns. And if you want to select the records randomly, we can use percentage sampling or row sampling transformations. And in the next section, I have discussed how we can sort or how we can combine data from multiple data sources using union all, and also how we can distribute the data to multiple destinations using multicast. And also we have discussed conditional split in the same section, which helps us to split the records and pass them on to different destinations. Also, I have discussed about the aggregate transformations, which is pretty much like group by in your regular SQL Server. And in section 5, I have discussed the audit transformation and also export column. So what if, for example, you have a very large column in your SQL Server and then you want to export that data to your file system, or you have a file on the file system and you want to import that onto SQL Server. So that's been discussed in section 5. And then I have discussed about the merge and merge join transformations and the differences between them. And in the next section, I have discussed about the lookup transformation, which is pretty much like equi-join for us, and how we can improvise the performance of the lookup with the help of the cache transform has been discussed in section 6. And then how to handle the bad data using fuzzy lookup and how to remove the unwanted duplicates using the fuzzy grouping transformations. So this is what we have discussed in section 6. So we'll continue to work with the data flow transformations in the 7th section as well as in the 8th section. Like we'll see how to work with the row count, OLEDB command transformation, and pivot and unpivot transformations. In section 8, I'll show you how we can work with the term extract and term lookup transformations. And from section 9 onwards, we'll be working with the control flow activities like bulk insert. So what if you want to insert multiple records into the destination in a bulk manner? So that's where we use the bulk insert. And we use sequence container for grouping our activities. And we'll also see how to use the execute process task to run any third-party exe files. And we'll also see how we can call one SSIS package from another SSIS package using execute package task. And in section 10, we will work with the file system, which will basically help us to do the different operations that we normally do in a Windows Explorer. And then we will see how we can communicate with the web service from our SSIS package and how we can retrieve the data what web service returns back to us. And then we'll see how we can work with the XML task, dealing with the XML files. And also we'll talk about the data profiling task, which helps us to analyze the data and present the report in a nice graphical format. And in section 11, I'll be discussing various transfer tasks we have. We have approximately some 8 to 9 tasks, which is what is being covered in the section 11. Like if you want to transfer database from one SQL Server to another SQL Server, or if you want to transfer the stored procedures or some specific objects of your SQL Server, we can use the transfer task, and that's been discussed in section 11. In section 12, I have dedicated this section especially for the for loop container. So wherein I'll show you how we can use the for loop in a fixed manner as well as in a variant manner. And we will also discuss about the for each loop container and its various enumerators. In section 13, I'll explain to you how to use configuration files and tables to make our packages bit dynamic. So wherein you can supply some values to our packages with the help of the configurational files or configuration tables. And in the next section, I'll show you how we can make our connection managers bit dynamic, or how we can make our package tasks also as dynamic. And in section 15, I have discussed about how to handle the events. So it can be like different types of events. Like for example, you want to run something before you actually run the specific task, or you want to run something after the task gets executed, or you want to do something when an error occurs in your package. So that's where event handling will help us. And in the next section, I have discussed the different log providers what SSIS is offering to us. Like you can log your operations to XML files, or you can log it to the Windows event log, or you can log it to the SQL Server database, or you can log it to some flat file text files. And in section 17, I have discussed about the Windows management instrumentation tasks like WMI data reader we have, and also we have WMI event watcher task, and those two have been discussed in the section 17. In section 18, I have discussed about the MSMQ task, which is meant for message queue task, and with this we can pass messages between two different SSIS packages. And in section 19, I have discussed approximately some 8 to 9 maintenance plan tasks. Like for example, you want to perform some kind of backup of your database, you can do that. So normally the SSIS administrators will be mostly dealing with the maintenance plan tasks, unlike the SSIS developers. And in section 20, I have discussed about the checkpoints. So checkpoints basically helps us to run the package from the position from where it is supposed to. So imagine you have an SSIS package with 10 activities and 9 activities were successful, but the 10th one has failed. So in that case, when you fix that issue at the 10th activity, and then when you rerun the package, it is supposed to start from the 10th activity of that package rather than starting all over from the first activity. So that's where checkpoints helps us, and that has been discussed in section 20. In section 21, I have discussed about various data sources and data destinations what SSIS is offering to us. For example, we can use an XML data source, or you can use a raw file data source, or you can use a data reader destinations, and so on. So all those things have been discussed in section 21. In section 22, I have shown you how we can do incremental loading using a manual approach. And then in section 23, we took help of the CDC components. So these change data capture components are pretty new from SQL Server 2012 onwards. So wherein we have CDC sources, CDC control tasks, and CDC splitters. So all these activities were used in the section 23. And finally, we end this course by learning about the deployment techniques. So we'll see how we can deploy our SSIS packages to SQL Server Integration Services catalog, and how we can execute the packages manually, or how we can execute the packages with the help of a scheduler, or how we can execute the packages with TSQL as well. In this lecture, I'll explain to you how you can install SQL Server 2016 in case if you don't have it. If you have it, you can proceed with the rest of the lectures. So you can notice now I have just run my SQL Server 2016 setup.exe, and this is the first screen that you see. Simply go into the installation tab and click on New SQL Server Standalone Installation, or add features to an existing installation. Ideally, we choose this option in case if you don't have SQL Server at all. So let's click on New SQL Server Standalone Installation. If you already have SQL Server, but you don't have certain features like BI features like IS, RS, and AS, you might as well use this option to add those new features to the existing installation. I already have SQL Server running on this computer, but still for this video purpose, I'm trying to install it again. So then it looks for some product updates in case if you're connected to internet. And if there are any updates, it will download it for you. For me, my updates are pretty much latest, so I don't have any updates for the SQL Server. So I can simply go ahead and try to click on next. And then it is trying to do the install setup file section. And it will try to check for these 4 options. And if once everything is completed, you can simply go ahead and try to click on next. So all of them have passed, no problems. Say next again. Would you like to perform a new installation of SQL Server or add features to an existing instance of SQL Server? Anyway, I would like to show you a new installation because that's what you might require in case if you don't have SQL Server running. So I click on this option, I say next. You can notice because I already have SQL Server 2016 installed twice on this computer. So you know the default instance name of SQL Server is MS SQL Server. Then I do have another instance of SQL Server 2016, and I gave the name of the instance as SQL 2016. I recommend even you should have two instances for the practice purpose, because in some of the lectures I may have to show you how you can move data across SQL servers. So that's the time you may have to have two different instances. So logically there are two SQL servers for me right now, but yes, there's only one. Both of them were installed on the same computer. So for some of the lectures you may have to have these two instances. So now I'm literally trying to have a third instance of SQL Server on this computer, so I click on next. Okay, product key, that's fine, and we accept the terms, say next. And this is most important here, the feature selection. So if you wish to have the complete database engine services, yes, you can select everything. What's most important for me is obviously reporting, analysis, and integration services, because we are mostly concentrating on the BI technology. I know this course is only for SQL Server integration services, so if you wish, you may not select analysis services and reporting services. And there are certain shared features and which are already been selected, so I don't have to do anything. Otherwise you have to select integration services and everything. So currently I'm happy with these things. Of course, for the sake of demonstration, I'm selecting even analysis and reporting. You can notice here you can have multiple instances of analysis or reporting services on a single computer, unlike integration services by default. Of course, there is a tweak around to have that as well. So what does that mean? Even though you install SQL Server on a single computer 10 times, you may have 10 instances of database engine, 10 instances of analysis, and 10 instances of reporting by default. There's no problem with that. But you can notice here I'm unable to install new instance of integration services on this computer because my default instance of SQL Server is already having integration services. So this is a very interesting point. So you cannot install integration services on every instance of SQL Server that you install on a specific computer. But there is a roundabout approach to get that done, which I don't want to show you right now because it's a different process altogether. My only concern in this demonstration is to just move on with the rest of the steps. So simply click on next. And then we will get into the feature rules. And everything is okay. Of course, there's a small problem for me. Oracle GRE is required for polybase, so that's failed. Anyway, I don't need polybase, so what I'll do, I'll uncheck this. I'll go again. This time it should be okay. And finally, you are on the screen where you have to configure the instances. So, okay, what's the instance name you want? Okay, I'm going to call this as installation video something. Installation demo. And that's going to be the named instance. And simply click on next. Then you have to have the server configuration, database engine, analysis, reporting services, and then finally we'll be ready to install. So this is where the server configuration, so I don't want to change anything, let it use the default accounts of various services. And for the database engine, yes, I can add myself as the SQL Server administrator. because currently I'm working on Windows 10 and I'm logged in as admin user, so I'm adding myself as one of the SQL Server administrators here. So that's my name of my computer, followed by my account name. That's okay. Say next. And also for the analysis services configuration, you need a guy with admin permission, so I'll add again myself. Say next again. Would you like to install and configure reporting services native mode, or install only, or reporting services SharePoint integrated mode? Anyway, I'm not having SharePoint on this computer, so we're not getting into the SharePoint area, so I'm happy to install the reporting services native mode and configure it. We are almost done. Click on accept. And finally, we should be ready to install. So if you follow the steps carefully, the way we have gone through right from top to the bottom, there shouldn't be any issues. Simply click on next, and we are ready to install. And I'll end the video here because you just have to click on install, wait for 25 to 30 minutes, and you should be okay. In this lecture, I'll show you the installation of SQL Server data tools, which is obviously the main prerequisite for us. Obviously, if you are installing SQL Server 2016, fortunately the setup screen itself will show you all the essential links for us, from where you have to download and how to install and all. So we have just completed the SQL Server installation demo video, and now I have to install the SQL Server data tools. Formerly it is called as BITS, Business Intelligence Development Studio, but we are now calling it as SQL Server data tools. So it's a kind of Visual Studio again, but it will have only the features what is required for doing the integration services, reporting services, and analysis services, but nothing else. But what if you already have Visual Studio like 2015 installed on your computer, but you don't see the BI projects? Even then you can go for this option of install SQL Server data tools. So you have two different ways here. If you don't have Visual Studio, it is going to install the SSDT with the features that are only required for the BI operations. But if you already have Visual Studio 2015 installed on your computer, and if you click on install SQL Server data tools, it's going to add the BI project templates to the existing Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and try to click on install SQL Server data tools. So it's trying to take you to the URL from where you have to download the SSDT. As such, I have already downloaded, but I'm just trying to show you the link here. And once you download that, we will start the installation part here. So what you need to select is download SQL Server data tools 16.5. 17 is obviously for the next version of SQL Server, which is called as SQL Server Next. It is still a CTP. So you need to go for this one, in fact. So I have already downloaded this, so let me take you there. You can notice here I have my SSDT here. So simply double click on SSDT and then click on SSDT setup. And I already have SSDT installed, so that's why it's asking me either you want to modify, repair, or uninstall. Anyway, I don't want to do either of those three, but I'm pretty sure when you are installing SQL Server data tools, it doesn't really ask you anything. You simply just have to start installation, and within 10 minutes you should have the SSDT ready. So how do we figure out if the SSDT has been installed correctly or not? Yes, you can go back to simply your Visual Studio. And let's say I'm right now inside my Visual Studio, and when you click on File, New Project, you should be able to see the template section called as Business Intelligence, and then you should see Analysis, Integration, and Reporting Services. So that is how, in this demonstration, I've shown you how you can install SSDT. I have installed SSDT after I have installed Visual Studio, as a matter of fact. But for any reason, if you don't have Visual Studio at the time of installing SSDT, you will still see an option like Microsoft Visual Studio shell. So that will help you to create the IS reporting services and analysis services stuff. In this lecture, I'll give you a quick overview of SQL Server integration services as well as the different tools that we use while we are working with the integration services. First of all, we'll have a quick understanding on what exactly is SSIS and what are the different uses of integration services, and also the fundamental concepts of integration services and also the integration services architecture is what we're going to see in this lecture. So first of all, you can notice SSIS is an ETL tool, so where E stands for extract, T for transform, and L for load. So we use SSIS for collecting and cleaning the data from various sources, and finally we put into a single destination or multiple destinations as per our requirements. So that's how SSIS is basically a platform for ETL operations. While we are working with SSIS, we do work with a lot of control flow activities and data flow transformations. So that's because SSIS contains a different engine for both of these two things. We have a control flow engine and we also have a data flow engine. So I'll be giving you good examples on control flow activities and data flow transformations throughout this course. And the main uses of integration services are importing the data and then exporting the data. I'll show you in the next lecture how to do that. Also, it is possible to integrate the heterogeneous data using integration services. SSIS also supports data cleansing and standardizing the data. So if we have some dirty data, so there are many ways that we can clean it up. And SSIS supports different BI solutions. When we talk about the fundamental concepts of SSIS, these are the different terms that we use every now and then. So the topmost element is your package, which is your SSIS package. So which basically contains a couple of control flow activities. It also contains data flow transformations, and we may also use variables throughout our package. And we also have a concept called as event handling. So we'll see all of these concepts in the subsequent lectures. So first of all, let's have a quick understanding on the integration services architecture. On the left side of this diagram, you can see we have inputs. So where we have a bunch of tasks available for us on the toolbox. Optionally, we may also use custom built tasks if we are a good .NET developer. And we also have different data sources. So in the middle of this diagram, what do we have is a package. So a package may contain containers. So we have some containers like sequence containers, for loop containers and all. We call those tasks as containers, which contains few other tasks inside. And we have a data flow activity or data flow task. So where we have to specify the source, the destination, and then if you need some transformations, you need those transformations here. We have approximately some 29 to 30 transformations. I've covered most of them in this course. And on the right side, you can see the integration services, the file system, or the MSDB. So basically, it means I can store my SSIS packages either onto the file system or onto my SQL Server databases. And I'll show you in the deployment lecture how we can deploy our packages to the database part. Also, we have enumerators as interfaces for us. So wherein you can pull some data into the SSIS object variables and you can enumerate through each and every record, or we can iterate through those records from that array. We use connection managers a lot while we are working with the sources and destinations. And of course, we do have event handlers and we do have log providers. So whatever that is happening inside the package, you can log it into a text file, or you can log it into an XML file, or you can even log it into a Windows event log. Event handlers also does some kind of logging for you. For example, when this task is about to get executed, you want to handle that event and you want to do something there. After this task gets executed successfully, On post execute, you want to do something. So on post execute, on pre execute, on task fail, you have different event handlers. So Microsoft is providing to us an interface or a tool to design the SSIS packages by using the SQL Server data tools, which we call it as SSDT. Formerly it is called as BITS Business Intelligence Development Studio. Currently we are referring it as SSDT. So SSDT is again a kind of Visual Studio which has got a bunch of project templates which helps us to create the SSIS packages or even reports or analysis services cubes. When you're working inside an SSIS package, the SSIS designer has got 5 different components areas. Like we have control flow. This is the place from where the package execution starts. So basically the flow of the execution of the package is controlled from the control flow tab. And then we have data flow. That's where we specify our source and destinations and transformations. And we can also design our SSIS packages inside the event handlers. For example, as I said, during the data flow, if something goes wrong, you want to log that error message into a SQL Server table so that you can do inside the event handler. Also, you have a package explorer where you can iterate through or walk through each and every component of your SSIS package. We finally have another tab called as progress or execution results. So where when you execute your package from SSDT, you can go to the progress or execution tab and see how things are going on. Pretty shortly, I'll be showing you these 5 tabs inside SSDT. So as SSIS developers, how do we work with packages? Yes, we may sometimes import the data or we may sometimes export the data using the integration services packages. Pretty much like what DTS used to do a couple of years ago. And we also have to manage these integration services packages in a secured manner. And we also have to run these IS packages from different places. Suppose as SSIS developers, I may run the IS packages from my Visual Studio, or once it has been deployed, we may want to run these IS packages with the help of a scheduler, or we can also run our IS packages by executing the TSQL commands itself. I'm going to show you those different deployment techniques and executing IS packages, your integration services packages in the deployment section. Also, we can monitor the running integration services packages because SSIS 2016 is giving us a better dashboard which clearly explains to us how the package execution has gone and how many were succeeded or how many were failed. You can have a quick look at the dashboard. While we are learning the different things in SSIS, we do use a lot of wizards. Like we have a SQL Server import-export wizard which helps us to import data or export data. In fact, in the next section, I'll show you practically how we can import or export data. We also have a package configuration wizard which I'll be showing you while we are trying to configure our packages to make the packages bit dynamic. So we can use some kind of configuration files or configuration tables. And we also have package installation wizard. So this we will be using while we are deploying our SSIS packages to the SQL Server database. So let's go ahead and try to create our very first SSIS package with the help of import-export wizard. In this lecture, I'll show you how you can set up our sample databases. So you can also see we have seen the first option and the third option, but there is an option for installing the latest version of the SQL Server Management Studio as well. So for any reason, if you don't find SQL Server Management Studio or you want to upgrade your existing SQL Server Management Studio to the latest version of SQL Server Management Studio, you might as well click on Install SQL Server Management Tools, and then you can download the latest version of the SQL Server Management Studio and you can simply install it. So you'll have a perfect latest SQL Server Management Studio once this is done. Anyway, this is a pretty simple installation, so I don't want to show you that. Simply download the file and then run the setup file. So in order to download the sample databases, what we require for this code, so you can go to the resources tab and then you can see you can visit the Codeplex sample website. So from here, I want you to download the AdventureWorks databases. So throughout these codes for our codes demonstrations, I have used the AdventureWorks 2014 database. So you can notice Microsoft has released a new sample database for SQL Server 2016 called as Wide World Importer Sample Database. But anyway, I have used my AdventureWorks database of 2014 to demonstrate you various things. So what you can do, you can simply click on the AdventureWorks databases 2014, and I want you to download the AdventureWorks 2014 full database. Or if you want to have a lightweight AdventureWorks database, you might as well go ahead and try to download the AdventureWorks LT. So anyway, it looks like LT is not listed out here, so that's fine, except the script they have given. So what you have to do, you have to simply go ahead and try to download this file. Once you have downloaded that file, you will see AdventureWorks 2014 full database backup. And when you obviously extract this file, you will simply have AdventureWorks 2014.back file. So you can notice if I try to extract here, I can see the back file is coming up out of that zip file. Okay, now once you have the backup file, you can simply go back to your SQL Server and you can restore it. So anyway, I already have AdventureWorks 2014 database on this computer, but I'm pretty sure how you can attach this to this. Okay, probably for if somebody is not having an idea how to get that done, so what best I can do, let me connect to my second database engine, second instance of my SQL Server, which is 2016, which is okay. As I told you, I have installed SQL Server twice on this computer with two different instance names. Default instance is this. This is my second instance. So for the sake of demonstration, I want to attach this AdventureWorks database to my SQL Server 2016. So I have a small problem because my second SQL Server is currently not running. So let me run that from my services first. This is SQL Server 2016, and in fact I have disabled this because I don't want to run all the time both SQL servers. So let's start the service. So once this is done, we will have our second instance of SQL Server running. So I'll show you there how you can restore that AdventureWorks database into my second instance of SQL Server. Simply click on connect. We're good. Now obviously this new instance is not having the database. So simply right click on databases, click on restore database, and click on device and select the file. I have my file inside my H drive, sample databases, AdventureWorks 2014.back. Click on OK. Now everything is good. It's done. And simply click on OK. Now it is trying to restore my AdventureWorks 2014 database. So that has been restored successfully. Click on OK, and then you can notice my AdventureWorks 2014 in my new instance of SQL Server 2016. So this is how in this demonstration I've shown you how we can set up our sample database, and this database has got so many tables, and all our SSIS demonstrations in this course are based on these tables. So overall we required SQL Server 2016, and we require SSDT, and obviously we require SQL Server Management Studio, and then you need a sample database like AdventureWorks 2014, which you can download from the codeplex.com website. In this demonstration, I'll explain to you how we can use import-export wizard to migrate data from one place to another place. So for the sake of demonstration, I am working with AdventureWorks 2014 database, and I'm going to pick up department as a sample table for this demonstration. You can notice this table has got some 16 records here, and this is what we would like to migrate from SQL Server to another destination. So we can invoke import export wizard from different places. Let me show you the first approach by clicking on the run button and then going to the SQL Server 2016, and then you can invoke the import export wizard. We have one for 64-bit, another one for 32-bit. So I'm going for the 64-bit version. So when we click on that option, this is the wizard we get. So simply click on next. So the first thing that we have to do is to select the source followed by the destination. So in this case, my data source is going to be SQL Server native client, and I leave my server name as local, and I use Windows authentication to get connected to SQL Server. And I'm going to select my database as AdventureWorks 2014. Click on next and choose a destination. Okay, in this demonstration, probably I will go for a flat file destination. So once we select the destination as flat file, you can browse to the folder where you would like to keep the files. Let's say I would like to keep this into a folder called as outputs, and here I'm going to name my file something like, say, departments, and simply click on OK. So once you have selected the destination, you can notice column names in the first data row. I leave this as checked so that in the output, in the very first row, you will see the column names. Simply click on next. And you have two options. Would you like to copy data from one or more tables or views, or you would like to write a query by yourself? Okay, in the first demonstration, I'm happy with the first option. Let's say click on next. And from which table would you like to copy the data? Yes, I'm interested from the departments table. So here you can choose the row delimiter as char is written line feed, or else you can choose the column delimiter as comma or any other delimiter of your choice. Simply, you can also click on preview to see what data will be basically gets exported, and you can also click on edit mappings, and then you can notice these are the 4 columns that are going to be exported to a flat file. And this is going to be the destination column name. If you wish, you can change these destination column names here and simply click on OK. Also, you can notice if you do not want to export a specific column's data, you might as well click on ignore. In this demonstration, I'm happy with these 4 columns. I click on OK and then simply click on next. So here you have 2 options. Would you like to run this package immediately, or would you like to save this package and run later? That's up to you. I leave this option as run immediately, but I would also like to save this package, so I can click on save SSIS package. So now you have 2 options. You can save your package either directly onto the SQL Server MSDB SSIS catalog, which we will see a bit later, or else you can save this onto a file system. I'm happy at this stage to keep this SSIS package location as file system. So means you will be saving this package onto your hard drive. Package protection level, at this point of time, I'm not going to use this option, so I leave this as do not save sensitive data and click on next. So now you have to choose the location where you would like to save this package. Okay, I click on browse and I go back to my data folder, and then I will be saving this into SSIS demos, and this is going to be your first package, export to flat file from SQL Server. That's the example. You can notice the package extension is DTSX, so click on save, and finally click on next, and we are ready to complete this wizard by clicking on finish. So now you can notice The import export wizard is trying to help us in transferring or exporting data from our SQL Server database to a flat file. So you can notice the status as success everywhere. 12 total, 12 success, no errors, no warnings. Also, if you would like to make a report out of this, you can do that and simply click on close. Now let's go back to our drive, and then you can notice in the SSIS demos we have the SSIS package. It has created for us a package, and also you can notice in the outputs folder you have departments.txt. So if I double click on the departments.txt, you can notice the data what we had in SQL Server is now inside a flat file. This is how in this demonstration I've shown you how you can export data from SQL Server to your flat file with the help of the import export wizard.